my name is Joe Harford, and I'm the founder and president of Reclamere. And what would you think if you were in a situation where when you were going ahead to get a glass of water out of your sink in your kitchen or your bathroom, that you were given notice that that water was poisoned? You know, how would you feel about that? I mean, having had kids in my house at one time, I'd be kind of freaked out as a parent, right? Well, within the last couple of weeks, you may have seen on the news that in the Tampa Bay area, in an area called Oldsmar, there is a water facility that actually had a pretty scary breach occur. And the point of this conversation is to talk about not just the breach itself, but more importantly, how a breach like this can happen to anybody. It's not just a utility company, be it electric or otherwise, a water company, etc. But these are the kind of challenges that are out there for every single business, small, medium, or large, that has employees, that have corporate email addresses, and that have corporate passwords and credentials that they're expecting their employees to keep safe and secure. So let's kind of walk through what happened. So the water system itself was attacked from the outside, and what happened was that the perpetrator was able to get into the network of the Oldsmar water facility and to then modify the chemical concentration specifically around lye. It's known as sodium hydroxide or lye. And in this particular case, what would be considered normal would be 100 parts per million, but actually the perpetrator was able to change that to 11,000 parts per million. Obviously, incredibly toxic, really bad for you if you were to drink it, etc. Fortunately, an operator at the facility caught this error, was able to stop it, and that we're aware of, no one was injured. So kudos to that operator. But how did somebody do this? How did this occur? So I want to kind of walk through a process with you. We know today that about 35 to 40% of our employees regularly take their corporate email address and a password that they may use at work, and they use that for other third-party applications. They could be going to Zillow, they could be going to eBay, they could be going to Amazon. It really doesn't matter. And so what's happening now is they're taking their corporate email address and a password that they use for something at work. In this particular case, it was an application that was used in the facility, and they're using it out on these third-party applications. Well, if that third party has its own data breach, and those email credentials, the email address and the password, are now stolen as a result of that breach, that information is now out on the dark web. And that information is actively being transacted, it's being sold, and it's being used. And not only is it being transacted and being used, but in this particular case, you can see these email credentials were used to intrude into the environment of a water facility and to modify the chemicals that were going to be in that water treatment facility. That's pretty frightening. So how do we get here? How does this occur? Well, again, what it goes back to is if we don't have a really great password policy, if we don't have a strong practice on how often do we force passwords to change, and if we don't have some kind of monitoring system or some kind of way to manage what people are doing, then we're going to be in a situation very similar to the Oldsmar water treatment facility, where literally their employees' credentials, email, etc., were found having been compromised and were used by an outside party to get access to the network and change the concentration of that chemical. That is what happened. This idea of email addresses and credentials being compromised out on the dark web is not anything that's new. It goes on a regular basis. So you have to sit back and say, well, oh my gosh, what do I do? Well, what you need to do is, first of all, do you have a password policy? Do you enforce strong passwords? Do you enforce passwords that are phrases? Do you enforce passwords that have special characters? Do you enforce the passwords expire? Oh my gosh, don't tell me I gotta remember all these passwords and I put them on a sticky note and I attach them to my monitor. Well, actually, when we do desk audits, more times than not, where we find passwords are in the top right-hand drawer of someone's desk. Just saying. So what you've got to do is you've got to find a way to give your employee a resource in order for them not to complain about the passwords. Password keepers are alive and well. Password management services, ID management services, all of these things are available to small, medium, and large-size companies across the United States. This particular water treatment facility could have purchased the service. And we're not talking about purchasing something that's complicated or expensive or difficult to manage. Not at all. It's something that have a brief conversation and talk to a service provider about password management. Talk to them about being able to make sure that their credentials aren't compromised out on the dark web, but have the conversation. So if there's anything that I can do to answer for you, whether it's about we need to create a password policy, we need to understand the practice of how to manage that properly, and then number 3, how do we actually monitor what's going on with passwords and credentials, please do me a favor. Hit me up with an email at joseph@reclamere.com. You can give me a call directly at 814-684-5505. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. But the most important thing you can do is go out and look for information as it pertains to minimizing and reducing passwords and compromises on credentials, because this particular issue that happened a couple of weeks ago in the Tampa Bay area is a result of emails and credentials being compromised out on the dark web, and unfortunately something really bad could have come about, and luckily because of the operator it didn't. So if I can help in any way, please send me an email, and I'm happy to answer any questions for you. Good luck, and remember, protect your passwords.